Hello, welcome to our webinar. We start in 2 minutes. Thank you. Hello, good morning, afternoon, and good evening to all participants. I'm very excited to have this worldwide attendance, this webinar. I would like to check, is everybody able to hear me? Good. Okay. So to begin and to incentivize networking, in the chat box, you can introduce yourself, mentioning your name, your job title, and if you have an initial message, or even if you are interested in any support, please indicate this. As it was mentioned in the webinar information pack, this webinar called Accelerating Public Transport's Transition to E-Buses is the first of 4 webinars. The webinar will focus on the experiences in Latin America, and the following webinars will present experiences in each continent. By December this year, we expect to run a final webinar where we will present the collective experiences and define the common denominator for the transition and massification of electric buses for public transport around the world. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Francisco Ramirez Cartagena. I am a senior sustainable energy and transport finance specialist at BASE, and I have been working for the past 15 years in electric mobility with a special focus in buses for public transport around the globe, and I will be moderating the webinar. Some webinar instructions. The webinar will last for 1 hour, and the last 20 minutes we use this time for some questions and answers from the public. So please write down your questions in the chat, indicating to whom the question is directed, and we will pass these questions to the speakers. If we are not able to answer this question during the webinar, at the end of the month, we will submit a document to all participants addressing the remaining questions. And also for those that are watching through live stream on LinkedIn, you can type your questions as comments, and we will make sure to collect them as well. However, something important is that LinkedIn does not inform us about the email that you are joining from. So it will be a good idea that you can register using the Zoom platform in the QR code that you can see in the screen. So please use the code and fill out the form. Also note that there is a live interpretation in Spanish. So for those watching on Zoom, you can just click on the globe in the bottom part, and then select Spanish language. And what you need to do after you do that is to mute the original audio to avoid any double sound. And again, for those ones using LinkedIn, please connect using Zoom platform to access live interpretation. And you can also use the the QR code that it was presented before. Hugo, if we can just show back exactly the same QR code. So saying that, welcome to our webinar. Currently, we have a very important participation for public from the different regions. Today, we are bringing a group of specialists whose participation in Latin America and Caribbean on e-mobility market has been fundamental. We have Daniel Magallon, the BASE CEO, who is setting the scene and will tell us about some examples of actions that BASE have supported in cities in Latin America. Also with us is Maria Fernanda Ortiz. Maria Fernanda was recently appointed as the general manager at Transmilenio in Bogota. Previously, she worked for BG Mobility. Maria Fernanda has a strong background in electric mobility for both public and private sector. Also with us, Lara Sang. Lara is regional director of the bus manufacturer BYD, which has the largest electric fleet in the region. And last but not least is Luis Andres Alandia, who from the Energy and Infrastructure Office of Proparco, he leads urban mobility debt investments worldwide. To begin, I would like to give the floor to Daniel Magallon, BASE Managing Director. Daniel is an expert in sustainability and clean tech with a focus on developing financing strategies and business models. Daniel has led e-bus projects in several countries, including supporting cities such as Bogota, Buenos Aires, Lima, Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and Costa Rica. So, Daniel, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here and for participating in this series of webinars. I'm going to just keep it short to give time to our speakers. First of all, is just to introduce BASE. BASE is a Swiss foundation founded in 2001 as a specialist, an independent center in business models and financial structures. We work around the world. And as Francisco was mentioning, we have been working now for many years in the topic of e-mobility, electric buses, especially on developing financial mechanisms and business models. So our role here is to make electric mobility, electric buses attractive and easy to access to the different stakeholders, to municipalities, to financial institutions to finance this type of products, to operators, and as well to help and facilitate the access of these technologies to the manufacturers. We have been working around the world in different topics. We have been quite active in Latin America in topics around e-mobility. However, we are active as well at the moment in Africa, and we have been active in Sri Lanka, in Asia as well. So, well, these are where the work of BASE in the past. The next one, please. Just to set up the scene. The next slide, please. Transportation is a very important aspect to address climate change. It's already becoming one of the most important emitters of greenhouse gas emissions. It is expected to reach 30% of the total gas emissions globally. And we need to decarbonize the transportation system. And obviously, e-buses is a very important piece for this decarbonization and to achieve the Paris Agreement that is very important to keep the climate to below 1.5 degrees. Fortunately, the trend of the growing market on e-buses is growing. It's growing very fast. You can see below the graphic of number of total of e-buses in Latin America, how has been growing from the last year, from 2017 to 2023. The orange bar represents electric buses. The green one represents trolley buses. The orange one is with batteries. So this trend is very positive. The following, please, the following slide. Here is a little bit about the demand, the market potential that has in Latin America from the last years, and as well the projections for the following years. So you can see that according to a study conducted by C40 and the city interviews, in 2023, we have around 4,000 e-buses in Latin America in 32 cities that they analyzed. From around 3,000 is related to e-buses with batteries, and 1,000 is with the trolley buses. And this trend seems to be increasing in the following years. So we are talking about investments in 2025 to $3.6 billion US. This is basically duplicating the amount of e-buses that we have now in 2 years. And then in 2030, this amount will increase to 42,000 buses to $11.3 billion accumulated until 2050, which the idea is to reach the target of 103,000 e-buses with an investment required of 24 billion. So it's a very ambitious plan, but I think there's a lot of action in the region. A lot of countries are moving with plans. The next slide, please. And you might have seen that there are countries that are quite active in this topic. Here's a graphic on how the different countries have been investing in electric buses in the last years. Brazil is at the leading position in investing. Colombia is there as well as Chile, as the 3 top countries investing in e-mobility, and then from there you have Mexico, Ecuador, Argentina, and the rest of the countries that they have plans and they are thinking and planning to invest in e-mobility and e-buses. The next one, please. So this is more or less a map that shows how active have been the region. Most of the countries in Latin America either have a national plan, a roadmap, but they have conducted some pilots already on electric buses, or they have initiatives, or they have already implemented some transition of fleets from diesel to electric mobility. So you can see that the trend is moving forward with the e-mobility and e-buses. The next one, please. This is only to show what kind of barriers are common in implementing these buses, and I'm gonna explain very quickly these ones. And the idea is to prepare the participation of our partners and to see how they are addressing these different barriers and opportunities from the different angles, from the manufacturer point of view, from the regulator, from the government, and as well from the multilateral or bilateral bank and development banks. So we know that there are some political and regulatory barriers related that there's a lack of appropriate regulation to promote electric mobility buses. That is basically hindering the growth of this market, or is difficult in this. As well, not particularly to e-buses, but particularly in general, there's a lot of informality in the transportation sector in Latin America, in different countries. And also other aspects that difficult the replication, the expansion of e-buses is that the governments change, the authorities change, and the plans normally tends to be delayed in this for this transition. Then in terms of operational risk, there's still some challenges in terms of a lot of market fragmentation. There's the need of having some adjustments on the operation of the buses, of the transportation, because it's not the same in terms of e-buses to diesel buses, and needs to be tailored according to the local conditions of each of the cities and routes that are required in each of the cities. In terms of financial risk, we know that e-buses require higher upfront investment than a diesel bus. As well, it requires investments in certain infrastructure, in charging stations. And an important aspect that we have identified is that from the financial point of view, the financial institutions, they don't see yet a secondary market, which is one of the elements that is crucial at the moment for financing buses or even vehicles. In the case that borrower doesn't pay for the loan, they just can recover the vehicle and they can sell fast this vehicle in the secondary market. As well, there are some technology risks associated with the e-buses. One of them probably is the lack of data, lack of information, that little by little, this is in the process of being built, but there's a scarcity of this. And as well, very little cases of success stories. They are coming, but slowly. And this as well is generating some knowledge gaps in different sectors at the public level, operator levels, in terms of the charging infrastructure requirements, in terms of the equipment, the performance, the size of the battery that is required, the lifetime, the guarantees in the operational conditions. So all these are the things that needs to be overcome, and it's very important to have in place policy, business models, financial structures that allow the growth of these technologies. So I'm going to stop here. I think this is my last slide, if I recall well. And I'm ready to hear our speaker's presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel, for your opening words and to show base participation within the sector. Yeah, definitely the e-bus market is evolving even from 2017, when the total bus market was about, in Latin America, it was about 300,000, in the world was about 300,000, to what the point is right now, that in total are 680,000 electric buses around the world. So it's evolving, so exciting times. Before we move on to the next panelist, I remind you to please leave your questions in the comment bar. Your questions will be answered during the last 10 minutes of the webinar. Our next panelist is Maria Fernanda Ortiz. Maria Fernanda has worked extensively in the private and public sectors, including in Bogota Secretary of Mobility, BG Mobility, and Transmilenio. Maria Fernanda co-lead Transmilenio development of the largest electric bus fleet in Latin America, with incorporation of 1,485 e-buses. And with the private sector, she supported the structuration process for electrifying public fleets in Mexico, Brazil, Panama, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina. As previously mentioned, Maria Fernanda was recently appointed as the general manager of Transmilenio. And without further introduction, I welcome Maria Fernanda to ask her to please share with us the recipe. What should be done as minimum by the public sector to capture the attention of the private sector and to lead them to make investments to e-buses. Maria Fernanda, welcome. The floor is yours.
Hi, Francisco. Thank you very much for the invitation and for this introduction. So today I'm talking to you not as general manager of Transmilenio, but using my personal experience in different countries and different companies, as Francisco mentioned, to share some key elements that I've identified in the different projects that has been successful electrifying fleets in public transport systems, but also an experience that I knew before in Costa Rica that today is not successful yet, but we can say that they are complying like the first key elements, and they can have a project in the coming years. So please, the following slide. So I can say that I know in detail these three cases. The case of Bogota, of course, because I was the economic manager of Transmilenio at the beginning of the structuration of the projects that implement the almost 1,500 buses in Bogota. And then I was the deputy general manager of the entity, and we work in the structuration process and also in the implementation of the e-buses in the city. In Bogota today, we have these 1,500 e-buses. We have 10 electro terminals, and today the first project has 3 years operating. So we can say that we have a very interesting experience, not only in the phase of planning and implementation, but also data in the operation process. Then we have the Mexico City case of the line 3 of Metrobus, where they have 60 e-buses operating for 1 year right now, and 1 electro terminal, and these buses are articulated buses that are higher than bigger than the ones that operate the ones that operate in Bogota, that are smaller buses, 80 passenger buses. In Mexico City, we can see the 150 passenger buses that are the articulated ones. So the case is also interesting in that sense. And we have the San Jose case that today they just have a pilot where they try the e-buses, but today they don't have this massive operation. They are working hard on having that in the coming year or years, but they are lacking like some key elements that we can identify in the other cases where today we have these big fleets operating. The following, please. So if we analyze these three cases, we can say that the key elements in successful cases are first the political will. So we should have the decision from the top of the government to make this happen in the city, because having e-buses in a city is not an effort just from this mobility sector, but also from the energy sector, from the budget of the city and other different entities and sectors that participate into the implementation of these kind of projects, because we have here not only the fleet and the operation part that are the common aspects that we face in public transport system, but also we have the energy and also the infrastructure component that are very important for the implementation of e-buses in a city. And the other part that is very important is that we need an electro terminal since the first day of the operation. That is different in comparison with combustion operations, regular combustion operations. So the political will is really important to make this happen. The second part, Base was mentioning before this, is the legal framework of incentives and disincentives, because today we have that e-buses are more expensive than others, so the capital is higher than the regular or the common projects of public transport system. So the incentive of reducing some costs related to the implementation of these fleets are key, and also to have this legal framework that say which are the goals and the projections of the city and the national level in the climate action process. So this legal framework is really important to have feasible projects. The other is also key for the participation of private sector and also for the financial sector and the warranties and it is the economical support from the central sector. And this is not only to put money to solve the capital investment at the beginning, but it is to have sustainable projects in time. So you, as public sector, you don't have to have like the money at the beginning, but you have to show to the private sector and to the financial sector that you are gonna have the money to pay to the privates what costs the project in time. That is different, and this economical support is crucial to have private sector participating into these projects. And the other that is related and is also important is an adequate distribution of risks between public and private. And we have a good the best example can be the risk related with the demand of the projects, because in past years of public transport systems, it's really common that the demand risk is assigned to the private, because we have public transport system that has been operated by private companies for about 50 years. So it's really common that, but in e-buses projects is crucial to distribute better, and after COVID, when the demand were very, very low, and today the demand is not the same that we have before. It is really important to assign that kind of risks to the part that better manage that risk, that in my point of view can be the public sector. And in that sense, we can have bankable business models to present to the private sector, to the financial sector, and to all the stakeholders that you need to implement this. This like is really particular in each case, and we don't have, and no one can say that this is like the best solution or is the unique solution, because in each country, each city, you can have a better solution for each context. So these aspects can be analyzed and should be analyzed to implement this kind of projects, but you can elaborate a specific receipt for each case. The other part is that you need to have a permanent conversation with private sector. So as I was mentioning, the private sector, the financial and other stakeholders are crucial to this, and to know what they think and what are like the minimum aspects for them to participate into the project. You have to have a permanent conversation with also manufacturers and others, because you need a big offer of services and also of parts and vehicles and infrastructure, chargers, etc. So it's really important to talk to the market. You also need to have strong technical skills inside of public entities, because you need to have a good conversation with the expert parts. And for that, you have to start working since years before of implementing a project, and to understand how this works and how the infrastructure is as important as the fleet. And this is not the same project that we used to have in our public transport systems. And the other part is that you need to find key partners from the energy sector, because these are projects that join efforts from the energy sector and the transport sector. And I think that I can finish here. We can talk more about the specifications of each project and each case. But I think that in Bogota, in Mexico City, and also, for example, in Chile, you can see these key elements as a minimum aspects to have a successful project. So I can finish here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maria Fernanda, for sharing these key elements for electrifying public transport systems. At the end of the presentations, we will have some minutes to ask some questions, and I think we can enter into a little details into the specific business models that you have prepared in your presentation. And also to answer more questions. I have questions. The audience, I can see that there are questions. However, I'm not going to stop in here to address them. I just would like to remind all the attendees to continue writing all your questions in the comment bar. And we will be solving them at the end of the session with the support of the panelists. So yeah, our next panelist is Lara Sang. Lara is the Regional Director of BYD in Latin America. She has over 15 years of experience in electric bus industry and has led projects of electric mobility and sustainable developments for over $500 million. BYD has been successful in Latin America and the Caribbean, leading the market share of e-buses. From my experience, I remember testing in Colombia BYD buses, a small van in 2010, and then later on a 12-meter bus in 2013. However, not only until 2018 and 2019, electric buses took off with an important implementation, first in Chile and then in Colombia. So Lara, could you please share with us and with all the participants the role of the manufacturer and the gap between expectations and reality when it comes to e-bus deployment? What are these specific barriers that you need to address, and what is still the battle? So yeah, welcome, Lara, and thank you for accepting to share your experiences. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Francisco, and also hi to everybody. And firstly, I also would like to thank to BASE for this invitation for this webinar, and to have this opportunity to share with everyone online about our experiences in electric mobilities towards energy transition. So firstly, I would like to give a small briefing about BYD. So actually, technological innovation for better life is our brand mission. So our company was established in 1995. Actually, we are a very young technological company. You can go to the next slide, Francisco, actually. Thank you. Yeah, so here I just want to address a little some milestones, important milestones of BYD in the past years. Actually, we entered into the automobile industry in 2003, and also from that time, we are all the time doing all the advancing of technologies, developing new products for different markets. Very important to mention that in March of 2022, BYD announced the stop of production for ICE vehicles. So we were only focusing on new energy vehicles, including pure electric vehicles and also plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So in 2023, the company will have launched two new brands. One is called Yangwang, which is a very high luxury brand, and also Fangchenbao, a very personalized and professional brands for different kind of customers and markets. So, and also last year, 2023, we celebrated the offline of production for our number 6 million vehicles in the world. Next one, please. Yeah, so I think a lot of you might know, like BYD, we have 4 main industries. So firstly, we are very active and we are a leading technology company in terms of automobile industries, including solutions of the customer markets and also the solution for the fleet markets. So we also have our light rail transit, Sky Rail and Sky Shuttle, and we have launched several projects in the world. And BYD is also a very important leader in the renewable energies in terms solar panels and also energy storage systems. About electronics, actually, it is our first business, and it is also the continuous development in this line. Go ahead. So we are globally, actually, BYD, we have over 600,000 employees. So of those employees, actually more than 10% are R&D. So BYD will invest a lot of our resources into the R&D in order to advance the technologies and also develop new products for different markets. So the company, we are applying almost like 27 patents per day, and also we have like approving of more than like 20 patents. So here I also want to share of one very important strategy of BYD. Actually, we combined a full industrial chain, and also we can provide full solutions for different kind of applications, including the conventional markets, such as consumer markets, public transportations, and also some specialized areas like ports, airports, mining, these kind of industries. So we are committed to solve the environmental issues, as well the congestion issues we are facing in many cities those days. So the company right now, we have presence in over 400 cities and 70 countries in the 6 continents. So actually, we have been very active in most of the regions, including Latam. Go ahead. So I'm very proud to share with everyone, last year, 2023, we have closed the year with a 3.02 million new car sales, which led BYD becomes the number one electric energy new energy vehicles manufacturers in the world. And actually here you can also see the data of 2023 for exportation of over 240,000 units we have exported in last year. And actually we have accumulated for over 6.3 million new energy vehicle sales until now. So here, following the question raised by Francisco, I want to share some of my experience and also some of my insights about the gaps you just mentioned, about expectations and also realities. So I will go a little to touch a little bit about this issue. Actually, I came to Latam since 2012, and I have been seeing the implementation and also the movement, the changes of electric mobilities in the countries such as Colombia and Chile, and also some other countries who is now starting their electric mobility prints. So I think the first thing is about a fight between environment and economic. So many people were, at the beginning, a lot of cities, governments, even the partners, stakeholders, they believed electric buses are too expensive compared with other technologies. So we will pursue economic profits, benefits, or as a sacrifice for the environment, or we will provide the solutions for the environment. So I think this is the first gap about that. Secondly, I would say about the technology. So actually, in early days, all of us has concerns. If the technology is developed, technology is ready to massify the transportation. So after my experience of these 15 years, I have seen the growth of the technologies and also the maturities of business models, and also closing gap of economic and financial and also environmental benefits. So the third one I would mention would be like the government policies. Actually, Maria Fernanda also mentioned about governmental wills. I think that is very important. If the government is willing to support the development of this industry and this transition, what kind of policies and incentives the government can offer in order to create this market and also to educate the market, to build this market. I think it's very important, the leadership and guidance support from government. So another one I would also say is about the products. Actually, in early days, there are not many choices of manufacturers. There are not many choices of products. So BYD all the time, we focus on the development of new products for the markets. If the market in different countries, they have different regulations, we need to comply, and we need to develop for different kind of size, different kind of capacity of the buses, for example. So I think that is also what we don't have before, but now we have it. More options and a full portfolio solutions for public transportations. So another one I also want to mention is about the stakeholders supports. Just also, I heard from my Fernanda presentation, the importance of different stakeholders, including government, energy sector, also the operation sector, financing sector, like Probaco, and some other very important international and national banks, which are giving the possibilities for, and also changes for the electric buses could be purchased or implemented in different countries in LATAM. So I also want to mention that BYD, we have been here in LATAM actually since like 15 years ago. And now in Colombia, we already have over 1,550 buses. All of them are pure electric. And also in Chile, we're also having closing to 1,000 buses, electric buses. And in other countries like Brazil, and also even some other LATAM countries, we already start implementing different kind of projects of electric buses. So I think that's the first part I want to share with everyone.
Right, thank you very much, Lara. As always, it's very interesting to understand the manufacturer's perspective and the barriers that need to be addressed in order to actually sell the product. Later on, I probably going to ask you a question about the financial products that, or the financial mechanisms that BYD has used in the past. I would like to remind the participants to write your questions in the comment box. Our final panelist today is Luis Andres Arandia. Luis Andres is a senior investment officer at Proparco's energy and infrastructure team and leads urban mobility debt investments worldwide. He has led the financing of 3 e-mobility transactions, deploying a combined amount of 150 million. 2 rounds in Colombia, the first one in 2021 with 259 buses. Then in 2022, 406 electric buses. And more recently in Senegal, an implementation of 121 articulated electric buses. So thank you, Luis Andres, for your participation. Very interesting experiences in Colombia and in Senegal. Could you please share with us Proparco's minimum requirements to provide financing to e-buses? For example, what are you looking for in terms of business models, transport system characteristics, and what type of financial instruments were used to finance the mentioned transactions? Thank you, Luis Andres, for accepting our invitation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Francisco, and thank you for the invite, of course. Y un saludo para todos los que nos escuchan desde América Latina. So I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know when you can see it. Let me know when it's there and I'll start.
It's there. Perfect. Carry on, please.
Okay. So to begin with, I'll very briefly introduce you to who Proparco is, and perhaps many of you don't know who Proparco is, but won't take too much time. Proparco is a leading European development finance institution, which is focused on the private sector. So basically, we are part of the French Development Agency group. The French Development Agency takes care of the public sector, and we at Proparco take care of the private sector. So for those of you who know the World Bank and the IFC, we are exactly what the IFC is to the World Bank. We at Proparco are the private sector arm of the French Development Agency. So we're focused on the private sector. We are very rapidly growing. We reached a commitment amount of $3 billion last year, which was a record year. Our activities focused on developing countries, so only countries that are eligible to public development aid according to OECD standards. So in the case of Latin America, this is going to exclude Chile and Uruguay. And of course, this is very frustrating for me when I see everything that Chile is doing in terms of electric mobility. But basically, we can intervene in any other country in Latin America. And we are very focused on urban mobility. It really is at the heart of what we do within the French Development Agency. I mean, since 2010, we financed over 7 billion of projects in transportation, and most of these, so approximately 4 billion, have been in urban transportation. And we at Proparco, as Francisco was mentioning in the introduction, have had the privilege of supporting flagship electric mobility projects very recently, because, and I'm going, of course, to be discussing these projects in a while, as we financed Electribus, which was the first fleet of electric buses in Bogota. The year after, in 2022, we financed Green Mobile, which is now the largest electric mobility project in Colombia. And then more recently, the BRT in Dakar, which is, and I'm actually in Dakar right now as the project was inaugurated this weekend. And this is the first eBRT in Africa. So of course, it's also a landmark project. So I'm going to be discussing this a bit more in detail. But a few things I wanted to say in terms of electric buses. I think many interesting information has already been shared by the panelists, but what I think is that this is an e-bus revolution, so to speak. This is not only a temporary trend. There is a shift, and which is very understandable, towards zero emissions in terms of urban mobility. Understandable why? Because as of today, these are two figures that I very much like from C40. 70% of emissions come from cities, and 1/3 of these come from transport. And then a second figure, it's that, of course, there are increasing urbanization rates. And what the C40 says is that if we want to meet the 1.5 degree target, then the use of public transport must double by 2030. So basically, we have increasing urbanization rates. We need urban transport to double, but then transport is, of course, a major cause as of today of emissions. So the transition is only logical. And as of today, e-buses are surpassing the growth of every other segment of the EV market, of the electrical vehicle market. So if we see the yearly growth forecasted from 2022 to 2027, there is a yearly growth rate of over 40%. So of course, Asia and Pacific is the leading region. As of today in China, 90% of new bus sales are electric buses. But it's not only China. Now, India, by 2025, is going to become, e-buses are going to become, India is going to represent 10% of the e-bus market by 2025. It doesn't seem like a lot, but this is more than North America and Europe combined. And if we focus on Europe, for instance, the share of electric buses within new bus sales was of only 15% in 2021. And last quarter, so the last quarter of 2023, it reached 40%. And the European Commission is giving a strong push towards zero emissions vehicles, because by 2030, the target is to have 100% of buses being zero emissions. So of course, I mean, this is a strong push. And then when we go towards Latin America is a land of opportunities for e-buses. We are in Latin America the leading region, I think, in this transition to zero emissions, to a zero emission urban mobility. We have about 5,000, a bit more than 5,000 electric buses in Latin America today. These are very concentrated in two countries, Colombia, of course, with Bogota having 1,500 electric buses, and then Santiago de Chile, which now has 2,000 buses incorporated, which is the largest fleet of e-buses outside of China. And a strong potential for e-buses overall in Latin America, because we have high urbanization rates, a high use of public transport as well. Public policies are increasingly focused on CO2 emissions, and it is also extremely relevant to talk about electric buses because we have in different countries clean energy matrices, which is the case, for example, in Costa Rica, which of course is almost 100%, if not 100% renewables, but also in Colombia, which has one of the cleanest energy matrices. So the projects we finance at Proparco, and of course, I'm happy to take any questions, won't take too much time also presenting this, but in a nutshell, so these have represented 300 million of funding that has been deployed, half of which proposed by Proparco, but working alongside, of course, strong financial partners. The first project, as I said, Electribus in Colombia, this was the first one and the first fleet of electric buses in Bogota, so 259 e-buses. The second one, Green Mobile, a year after, which is a fantastic project as well. This is the largest operation of e-buses. A fun fact here, when you see the buses of Electribus, they're blue, whereas the ones in Green Mobile are green. And this is because if you have been in Bogota, you know that the buses for 80 passengers are all blue, or because they have a color code, of course. And when this fleet came in and they were painted in blue, as they were supposed to, the mayor said, but I mean, these are electric buses, they should be painted in green. So of course it was a bit too late. That's why if you ever go to Bogota again and you're on an electric bus, but which is blue, then you know that it's the first fleet, because then all the others, such as Green Mobile, are green. These were buses sold by Lara, by the way, from BYD. And then the third project that I mentioned, the BRT in Dakar. So of course, a landmark project with, and I mean, it has been fantastic for me as an experience to be here for the inauguration and to see the projects. We did the site visit this morning. This is the first electric BRT in the continent. The standards are really, I mean, it has a strong replication potential in the region. So hopefully we'll be seeing more also in this continent. But anyway, so and then I'm going to finish with this slide, which is going to be perhaps a bit boring for those of you who are not within the project finance sphere. So if it's the case, bear with me for these 2 last minutes. But basically, I was asked, of course, to talk about the challenges and the lessons learned from the perspective of a financier. So many things have been said already, but I think that I'm going to talk about 4 things. The first one, within electric buses, is that higher capex, so higher investment, meets lower opex. That's very interesting because the capex required, so again, the upfront investment required for electric buses is much higher than conventional buses. It pretty much represents twice as much. So an electric bus costs twice as much than a conventional bus. But then you have the yearly savings that you make on OPEX, mostly because you're not paying for fuel, you're paying for energy, and there's, of course, a strong differential in price. So basically, year after year, you have savings in your operations. And the thing is how to combine both. And hence the concept of total cost of ownership. If you take the useful life of an electric bus, which is 15 years, and then you take the costs that this have represented, year after year, so not only the upfront cost, which is twice as much, but also the cost year after year in OPEX, and then you take a conventional one, you have a lower total cost of ownership for electric buses. And this is key because it means that it is viable. We just need to find the structure to make it bankable and to let the financing, I mean, not be a barrier to the deployment of e-buses. the second element, which is the battery replacement. So not going to get into too many details, but basically battery replacement represents roughly 30% of the capex. So if you are investing 100 million in an e-bus project, then you know that pretty much around year 7 or 8, you'll need to replace your batteries, and these are going to cost about $30 million. So of course, it's a key element. And it's a key issue for sponsors as well, because sponsors, I mean, being the project developers, because they are going to say, okay, what is the best strategy here? I mean, is it better to play it safe and then secure the supply of these batteries, which is going to come in 7 years? Or is it better to just wait for a bit? Because what has been happening so far is that battery performance is increasing, prices are decreasing. So you say, I mean, might as well wait until year 7 and see. But of course, from a financing perspective, it is a big risk, because if we as banks financing these projects run the risk of having assets that can no longer operate after 7 years, whereas our financing is sort of 12, 13, 14 years, then of course there's an issue. So I might discuss this a bit more, but this is interesting because we have followed different approaches in the cases of, I mean, a very different approach for each project. Electribus, basically, they prefer to be completely secure. Green Mobile, it was very interesting because BYD offered an interesting proposal, which was to pre-sale the batteries on day 1, basically, with a discount that made it interesting for Green Mobile. And then for Dakar Mobilité, it was a different option that was taken. So, but it's an interesting topic, the battery replacement. Number 3 is the bankability and demand risk. Maria Fernanda said many interesting things on this, but the bankability of the business models is all the more relevant in electric buses because, again, there are high financing needs. So models need to be bankable. We need to shift towards different solutions here. And then the last one, and Maria Fernanda also, who's now, again, the general manager for Transmilenio, made it clear the public sector has a critical role to play in this transition towards electric buses by many aspects, mitigating the demand risk. That's one. Giving long-term concessions and being very consistent in the support that they are giving towards private operators. I'm going to stop here, but thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Luis Andres, for sharing with us Proparco's experience on electric buses, and thank you to all panelists. I have organized some of the questions coming from the public and also questions that we have internally. And due to the time, I'm gonna start with Maria Fernanda. I know Maria Fernanda has another commitment, so I'm gonna be quick with the questions. So Maria Fernanda, in Latin America, we have very interesting examples of countries with a strong policy. And you have mentioned using the case of Costa Rica, even though there is a strong policy, strong will, still no buses. But this is not happening only in Costa Rica. It happens also in another cities, in another country. This is a worldwide situation. So do you think in here could be a responsibility that the current business model, for example, the traditional business model, do you think, or do you have in mind any mechanisms that have been used in countries such as Colombia or another countries to mitigate the risks perceived from the financial sector from the traditional business model?
Yes, Francisco, that can be one aspect that Costa Rica is missing today, that they have today a traditional business models. I think that you can arrange some like aspects inside of the same business model, but giving some like mitigate, like some aspect that can mitigate that business model or the implications that traditional business model has in the operation of the e-buses. So for example, you can have like a provider inside of a traditional operator, and the government can define a specific tariff to pay for the provision of the fleet, for covering the investment of the infrastructure and also the fleet, with a specific tariff, but using the same contract that they currently have with the operators, but giving securing that the payment for the provision of the fleet and the infrastructure in time, using a specific tariff. That can be like a solution using the same traditional business model. And the other part that is missing in Costa Rica, in my point of view, is to have much more conversations with the private sector to understand which is the specific offer that the manufacturers, the financial sector, and others can have in the country, and to understand that the infrastructure is also important, that you can have buses, but if you don't have the infrastructure, you can have buses parked in a depot, but that's not an e-buses project in total. So it's really important to understand that the infrastructure has to be done at the same time and at the same pace that you buy the fleet and resolve the problem of the business model, the traditional business model. Because today, for example, in Costa Rica, they don't have they don't see the specific costs that the e-buses have in the tariff and the user fare that they define with some formulas there. So they have a lot to do, but I think that they have today, which is the first step, that is the political will and the legal framework that is really good for e-buses in Costa Rica.
Thank you, Maria Fernanda, for your answer. So summarizing, there are two specific aspects here. So the first one is the defining tariffs, the first one, and the second one, using secure payments. So this is something that you have mentioned in your initial discussion, where to some extent the government, additional to provide all these policy incentives and also step by step how the system is going to transition, is how they can help secure the payment for the transport sector to repay assets that traditionally require longer term to be repaid. So yeah, thank you, Maria Fernanda. I think I know 10 minutes is just a really short time to discuss all these great experiences. I'm going to ask a question now to Lara. And I would like to ask, and before I ask the question, we run out of time. We are 3 minutes past the time. It's okay for Luis, Andres, and Lara to stay 5 more minutes. We finish with the questions, and the webinar is over. Excellent, thank you. I'm sorry to all the participants. We ran out a little bit on the time, but let's try to move ahead as quick as possible. So for Lara, what are the elements that BYD sees as necessary to enable the transition in any country in the region? And could you please summarize 2 or 3 financial mechanisms or instruments used in the different countries to purchase e-buses? For example, national climate funds, concessional loans, grants, guarantees, supplier credit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Francisco, for the question. So if I just mentioned, actually the technology already mature and advanced. So right now the price of electric buses is also very much affordable compared with years ago. And so it is a moment for many cities and countries to implement the technologies. So from my side, I would want to share, definitely first thing I also want to address about the sustainable business models, what I also just mentioned by different speakers. So because for the business model, how to control the risk how to make this project bankable and financeable. So it's very important to mitigate the risk from different perspectives, from operational perspective, as well as from the purchasing of the bus or financing of the buses. So from BYD side, actually, in all successful cases in Latam, in those projects presented by Maria Fernanda and also Luis Andres, BYD, when we start projects, we also offer kind of like bridge financing from outside, so which includes which will cover the production stage and also until the delivery stage. So we also give a short period of time, around 1 year to 1.5 years of bridge financing from the manufacturer side in order to support the project owners to close the long-term financing with banks like Probaco and some other FDN and other banks. So I think this is also a very competitive advantage of BYD in all these electric bus projects. So definitely from outside, we also provide with our experience, how to close the models like Luis Andres just mentioned about the CapEx, about OpEx. So how will be the TCO, the total ownership cost in the lifetime of the projects? So in order to present actually the project, it is a sustainable project which feasible to be implemented. So, but right now I think for in order to promote more projects of electric buses in different countries, I would definitely suggest the alliances and supports from government for incentives in order to mitigate, closer the gap between the technologies. I think that is also what Bogota Transmilenio has done successfully, to have differentiations of different technologies with terms of operation that will help to maximize the project's feasibility. So another point, so I also think like different banks, international banks especially, and also local policy banks should also give the special lines of credits and financing for this kind of projects.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lara, for your insights. Moving ahead, and the final question to Luis Andres. Luis Andres, there is a global interest on electric mobility. However, a very low penetration. I think you mentioned in your presentation, you know, that there are obviously countries like China with 80 to 90% penetration, the new technology. However, if we exclude, you know, the China from all the total buses operating in the world, we have about 1.5 penetration of the new technology, you know, to the entire fleet. You know, only 1.5% are electric. And we have special cases, for example, Chile, with Santiago, Bogota, the average penetration is about 7 to 8%. So, you know, there are efforts, but only little successful cases actually available around the world outside China. So do you, and this is a quite similar question to Maria Fernanda, what do you think is the main barrier that stands in between the interests of the central and the municipal governments and the pacification of e-buses? Do you think the traditional model where the operator has 100% of the risk or the demand of passenger, that is the current model most used in the world, could be responsible for not having a greater number of relevant experiences in Latin America and the world? Any examples that you have seen that have mitigated this situation?
Thank you, Francisco. I think it's of course, extremely relevant question. And yes, I think that we need to rethink the business models in urban mobility if we want to ensure an adequate deployment of electric buses. That's for sure. Because as I said before, an electric bus costs twice as much as a conventional one. So basically, it means that we need 2 more times the investment that we would for a traditional bus system. So it's either the public sector taking this, which of course is a huge amount of money, or the private sector. So of course the participation of the private sector is key, but the support of the public sector in this remains also essential, because the public sector needs to attract private investors coming to the project. And also the public sector needs to ensure that the concession models are bankable for the financing, because there is huge financing available, but it has to be unlocked, of course, via bankable concession mechanisms. So, of course, one thing, and it's not surprising to see that 80% of the electric buses in Latin America are in Chile and in Colombia, because that's what Santiago and Bogota did. The concession model of basically what they call the unbundled concession model, where you have asset ownership on the one hand and you have the O&M on the other hand, of course, makes sense. And this is, Maria Fernanda highlighted, the adequate risk allocation. I mean, if you're an operator, then basically you shouldn't have to have the burden of this high upfront investment. But on the other hand, if you are acquiring the assets, then there's no need to operate them, right? I mean, you just need to acquire the assets. And as we say in Latin America, zapatero a sus zapatos, we each take care of what we know. And basically, this is the adequate risk allocation. And the fact that we have this unbundled traditional model and the concession that owns the assets does not have any demand risk whatsoever, of course, has made a lot easier for e-buses to be deployed in these cities.
Thank you, Luis Andres, for sharing your experience, and also thank you to all the panelists and the participants. We have taken a large amount of questions that, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to take all these questions, we're going to organize them, we're going to pass them to the panelists, and they're going to help us address them. And at the end of the month, you will be able to receive them in your emails. So yeah, we have a very productive session. Thank you very much. Short time. We will try to see if we can do a larger, increase the time for the next sessions. And as I mentioned before, we are launching a second webinar in April. This will be focused in experiences in Asia. Then in July, we'll focus in Africa. And then in October, we'll focus in Europe. So all of these that by December in this year, we will be presenting the last webinar that will present the collective experience and define the common denominator for the transition and massification for electric buses around the world. I hope you will be able to participate in our future sessions. Thank you very much for the participation to all. This webinar is over. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone. See you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.